We're going to begin our look at Lower Deck's first season with the second half for reasons that will be more obvious when we get to the first half. Before we start, quality is in the eye of the beholder. So you're getting my take on how I'd consider the quality of each. That's just how this works. Additionally, I don't subscribe to the idea that there is some kind of platonic ideal of what a work should aim for. I think the scoring should serve as a useful comparison within, not an attempt to quantify the unquantifiable. That rubs some people the wrong way, I know. Someone once told me that no TOS episode should ever be scored below a 5. But again, that defeats the whole purpose of this approach. Otherwise, if I was doing that, I'd have to say, okay, the score is between 5 and 14. So the thing to get about this system is that a score of, say, 4 isn't an indication that an episode is bad. It's that compared to what it feels like the norm for a show would be, it's slightly below their average. Now, below average also sounds bad, but again, a below average horse will still outrun a remarkable donkey. So just think of it that way. If it seems like, well, that's a great episode and it's getting a 4, it probably means, well, yeah, because this is just a great show. We begin with episode 6, Terminal Provocation.
He shouldn't be affected by the physical parameters of the simulation.
I'm gonna wear your skin!
Where some salvagers have shown up at the site of a 100-year-old wreck, only for the Cerritos to arrive and try to claim dibs. Seems kind of dickish to finally show up just when someone else has gotten around to going through it. But we can't be concerned about that. We've got to contend with the new guy, Fletcher. Plus, Tendy's revelation that she's never done spacewalk training. Rutherford volunteers to take care of that particular part of the plot. He's going to take her into a special training program he's made on the holodeck, which involves this cute little guy, Badgie, his holographic helper. This is a problem when the A and B plots get involved, as Fletcher has taken away part of the system that handles the shields, and the salvagers begin throwing bits of junk at the Cerritos. So the junk is hitting compromised shields right now. That in turn causes feedback that turns off the holodeck safeties because, of course it does. That leaves Badgie completely homicidal, as most programmed holographic mascots would be. Rutherford finally kills the pursuing monster in the end, but unstoppable is the component that Fletcher broke to the point that it also becomes a menace. But throwing it out the airlock turns it against the salvagers. And Mariner and Boimler decide we should give Fletcher all the credit for that thing, so that he can be promoted off this ship and onto the Titan. Maybe it's galling, but it's worth it if it gets him out of their hair for good. As a bonus, he lasts all of a week before Riker demotes him back to ensign for throwing garbage into the warp core and gets him sent back to Earth. Terminal Provocations gets a score of 4 out of 10, again meaning that it's slightly below the average of all Lower Deck episodes. The humor is dark, and some of the stuff brushes the line of cringe, but not actually crossing over in my view. The episode also introduces Badgie, who is not gone by any means. What's notable, and this is why we're starting here, Mariner and Boimler have to admit they do better when they're working together and not at cross purposes. At the same time, it begins retooling Mariner, where she says she only breaks rules that are getting in the way of what needs doing, which isn't true, and wouldn't put anyone in danger, which isn't true as Boimler notes, so she admits that he is the exception. We'll get into that more when we get to the first half of the season. First, it's time to go on to episode 7, Much Ado About Boimler.
Anyway,
Freeman, Random, and Shax are going to be carrying out a Chains of Command style secret operation. So during that time, one Captain Ramsey and a few of her entourage are taking over the ship. This is good and bad for Mariner. Good because she went to the academy with Ramsey, so they're good friends. Bad because Ramsey actually wants her to serve as her first officer on the Cerritos. This is a problem because that would require Mariner to, well, not act like a complete dipshit, which is the way Mariner acts to avoid any chance of being promoted. Her scripts are so masterful they border on performance art. Things change when they find the USS Rubidoux, powered down and adrift, though by design it turns out. There's a life form aboard that consumes power, and when the entourage turns the power back on, Shit gets real. It's only now, when the situation is deadly serious, that Mariner stops self-sabotaging and becomes the officer that Ramsey used to know. In the B-plot are anomalies, one being Dog, a creation of Tendi, who heard about them and decided she was going to make a dog from scratch. Dog is a nightmare of science, but the rest of the time is adorable, so the fact that Dog has to go is sad. Also sad is that Boimler is going too, on account of Rutherford experimenting with the transporter, and it leaves Boimler stuck improperly phased into reality. This is a job for Division 14, who arrive in their ship of doom, led by a 3-armed alien. He's based on that guy who took over for Chekhov in the animated series. Anyway, he's in charge of the ship and is going to bring them to the farm. The ship is full of freaks, the results of the various black magic shit that you run into working for Starfleet, with their de facto leader being a guy who is half aging forwards really fast and half aging backwards. Well, Half and Half says that there is no farm, they just travel around space, Starfleet's dirty little secret. Well, they're planning a mutiny, which Boimler reports in the hopes of de-escalation, but instead it gets escalated. And then the freaks turn on Boimler to try to throw him out the airlock. To win our sympathy. This doesn't end badly, though, on account of they've already landed on the farm, a paradise world where they'll be waited on hand and foot while efforts are made to cure them. But not Boimler, since his phasing wears off, so he and Tendi are headed back to the Cerritos, minus one flying dog. Much Ado About Boimler gets a score of 6 out of 10, meaning it's slightly above average of all Lower Decks episodes. This is Lower Decks finally getting comfortable with itself. Mariner's early self-aggrandizement is exposed for what it is. It's not that she doesn't have some skills, it's that skill is being intentionally squandered. That is not a virtue. She's forced to admit she's staying down here in the Lower Decks to sort her shit out. The stuff with Dog never disappoints, and combined with the collection of self-described freaks and the alien menace, shows you what you can do when you're animating. Something I've been part of Gene's intentions with Star Trek the Animated Series. Tell stories that you couldn't have in live action. But things are rather familiar in Episode 8, Veritas, featuring the return of Kurtwood Smith to Star Trek as the alien running the trial of the Cerritos crew.
You ruined my party! You ruined my party! You ruined my party!
The Lower Deckers are tossed into an alien dungeon and then raised up into a room that is very much in keeping with the Klingon court in Star Trek VI, with the senior officers all suspended in a beam. Having brought in the Horn of Truth, the guy handling things asks Mariner what happened with the bug aliens during a red alert. She doesn't really quite know everything, as they arrived without context thanks to a little mix-up with the red alert system. Let's not get into that. The point is, though, when she was told it was time to send these bug aliens a message, she took that as a euphemism for firing a warning shot. Not that the captain was trying to be literal. Rutherford shares what he knows, but is limited because he was using a feature of cybernetics which blanked his memory and let the implant run the show for a while. What he can recall is being dressed like Vulcans and stealing a Romulan ship from a museum so they could use its cloak. And it involves being mauled at a Gorn wedding. Tendi's pulled into a squad by Ransom thinking that she is the cleaner, and she comes away thinking he means someone who tidies up. Well, they use that Romulan bird of prey to head across the neutral zone and take some crate. Well, the guy running this trial thing is unhappy. All three of them are dropped into a tank where they face death by eels. His words. Boimler finally makes an impassioned presentation that the senior officers are not infallible. This trial is unfair. Well, it turns out it's not a trial. It's a party to honor the senior officers for rescuing him from the Romulans in that crate. There's an explanation for everything, except for the death by eels. That I think that we can all agree clashes with his narrative. Captain Freeman says they should do a better job from now on of keeping them in the loop. And then she immediately closes the loop when they ask inconvenient questions. No surprise there. Veritas gets a score of 8 out of 10. I might be rounding up because it was my favorite one of the season. But this was the episode that I think most embodies what the show becomes. This truly leans into the view from below that we would expect from lower decks, and is filled with one great scene after another. Kurtwood Smith and Mariner shouting at each other with his, "You ruined my party! You ruined my party!" will always be synonymous with it for me. And John Delancey even has a small role. There's a flashback to when Q put the senior officers on trial for humanity by putting them in chess piece costumes on a board opposite a bunch of playing cards and being sung at by a soccer ball, trying to figure out what the test actually is. This is the episode when Lower Decks has found its identity, and not only found it, but is proudly announcing what it intends to be. From this, we go to Crisis Point, Episode 9.
Okay, stop! It is not my whole thing. And for your information, many Orions haven't been pirates for over 5 years!
This episode kicks off some dark humor that I can get behind. The violation of the Prime Directive in bringing down the rat people who rule over the lizard people, raising them to be food. Well, we are delicious, a lizard cheerfully admits. Well, I agree it is a violation of the Prime Directive. It's also the kind of thing Kirk would probably have done too. In retrospect, this might have been a commentary on the Season 2 Discovery episode when something similar happened with the Baul and the Kelpians. Though let's be clear that the PD was the least of the concern in that situation. Captain Freeman orders Mariner to go to therapy, which she thinks she doesn't need. Except anyone that is self-sabotaging to avoid promotion sounds like they are obvious candidates for therapy. She smashes up the therapist's bonsai tree and proceeds to interfere in Boimler's holodeck program to show how well she's doing without it. He's violated everybody's privacy by downloading all their personal logs and using it to create precise recreations of the Cerritos crew. Mariner takes that violation a step further by seeing these lifelike simulacrum as being the perfect targets for bloodlust. She turns it into a movie, complete with plenty of send-ups, including a recreation of the stupidly long trip around the Enterprise from the motion picture. Then arrives as a pirate captain, boards the ship, and begins slaughtering the crew. She tells Tendi to go take some slaves, awkward from both a "these are our colleagues" view, and also a "thanks for bringing up a part of the heritage I'm ashamed of" for Tendi. What compounds this for Tendi is that this is who Mariner wants to think that she is, that if she can't be the hero, she will then be the ultimate villain. Mariner winds up getting into a fight with a holographic recreation of herself, and comes to realize who she really is. The recreations are based upon their personal logs, after all. She comes out rethinking her place on the ship, calls it the best therapy she's ever had, and proceeds to act nice to her mom as part of the change. This puts me at odds with many fans, but I give Crisis Point 3 out of 10. I know why it's here. I agree it's doing something important for both the show and the character arc of Mariner. The score, remember, is not a representation of quality, but how I consider the experience. And this really made me uncomfortable in a bad way. Mind you, I used to teach middle school students, so the concept of someone coming into my work and blowing away everyone they spend their day around, that's not cathartic, it's tragic, and it might be too deeply ingrained for me to see this in any other way. I also think that the outcome should have been, I do need therapy, and not, indulging in violence is my therapy. I realize that I am in the minority on this one, but I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass. The show isn't the I Am Right podcast, it's the Opinionated Guides, because that's all that I can share with you, one man's view. Hearing Mariner ask if Tendi wants to join her in seriously torturing the recreation of Dr. T'Ana, it's like the stabbing scene in Saving Private Ryan for me. There's a reason it's there, but I wished I hadn't seen it. What comes out of it is for Boimler to discover that Mariner is Captain Freeman's daughter, which is a point in the season finale, no small parts.
This isn't the Enterprise, this is the Cerritos!
We thought you were the Enterprise!
This begins as a sequel to Return of the Archons, where the locals are once again worshipping the computer Landru, prompting her to comment on the need to show up before planets start to backslide, setting up something down the line. Right now, Mariner is handing out art supplies to the kids, which Boimler joins in, letting slip that he knows who her mom is. By slip, I of course mean very intentionally bringing it up. Which is worse because their comm badges are active and everyone on the bridge can hear. Elsewhere, the captain from Much Ado About Boimler, whose last ship was destroyed by a tentacle monster, has a new ship, only for it to be attacked by some big freakish ship. As for the rest of the lower deckers, Rutherford realizes he can cycle through all his attitudes thanks to his cybernetics, and Tendi is mentoring an exocomp who arrived named Peanut Hamper. Mariner is irritated with the revelation of her parentage as everyone is treating her differently now, and thinks the only way to escape back into anonymity is to take the promotion that Boimler is trying to get onto the Titan. This is partially punishment, as she has the chance for promotion and has the chance to be transferred off. She doesn't need this specific opportunity. It's really about denying Boimler getting it for letting her secret out. But the plot intrudes as they investigate the missing ship and get attacked by the bad guy vessel, which turns out to be the Packlids from Samaritan Snare. They've Frankenstein together 30 different types of technology to make their ship this strong, and work to start carving up the Cerritos. Freeman asks Mariner how her unconventional thinking would handle this, and Mariner says to take advantage of weak computer security, since all these systems need to be able to work together, and the Packlids are, well, stupid. To do this in a hurry, we'll need Badgie again, so Rutherford brings it on and turns off the safeties, and the way to get it is staring them right in the face. Bring it over in Peanut Hamper. Only she declines and beams herself away. So instead, Rutherford puts the program in his own cybernetics and Shax brings him over. Only Badgie betrayed him. The virus won't completely upload. So Shax rips the cybernetics right off him, sends Rutherford back while dying valiantly on the Packlid ship. Well, that one is dealt with, but 3 more show up. But so too does the Titan, driving them off. But Rutherford lost a lot of his memory, including everything of Tendi, and Boimler's got a personal promotion and transfer from Captain Riker himself, much to Mariner's infuriation. Final score for No Small Parts is 6 out of 10. Again, this is above average for lower decks. This isn't penalizing it. It's saying this show frequently does even better. This finale gives everyone their moment while setting up for the new season. The use of the Packlids as their big bad is an inspired choice, which also sets the stage for their own recurring adversaries for Season 2. Looking back, Season 1 is uneven, but it was probably the best first season of any of the prior series. It took a while discovering itself. It's a show that couldn't even walk and so had to crawl, but soon it learned how to run. And, well, eventually it learned how to fly. However, in order to explain that, we should cover the first half of the season, which we will on Saturday. Lower Decks Season 1.0 is next.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Oh!
What's humanity all about? It's puzzle time! It's puzzle time!
Any ideas? Anybody?